Hey guys, if you are all looking for a side hustle to make some extra money, I discovered a way to make money just from your phone. It's all through a program called freecash.com, which partners with mobile games looking for new users to try their apps. I'll show you how it works, and it is 100% legit. Scan the QR code to download the mobile app where you can see earning opportunities, track your progress, and cash out once you download and sign up. Pick a game. I recommend Die Streams because it is the fastest to earn on it. Then check out the directions on what levels you have to hit to get paid out. Freecash.com allows you to earn money by playing games. Once you reach certain levels, the earnings are deposited into your freecash.com app for cash out. It's a free platform that partners with game developers to find people to test their games. In addition to games, freecash.com offers daily giveaways and cashback on purchases, though the games are arguably the best feature. I've personally tried it and recommend it. While it won't make you rich, it's a great way to earn $10 to $20, with some games paying over $300 if you're willing to dedicate the time. To get started, scan the QR code or click the link in the description. It's completely free to try. So picture this. It's about 4 in the morning, one of those cold, damp London wing days where the air feels heavy and clings to you. I'd fallen down a video game rabbit hole surfaced hours later, and I realized two things. One, it was obscenely late, and two, I'd completely forgotten to eat dinner. A quick, desperate skin of the kitchen confirmed the worst.
Nothing, damn it.
My only hope was the 24-hour McDonald's drive-through down the road. It is maybe a 10-minute walk, mostly through quiet suburban streets that feel almost unnervingly still at that hour code when I headed into the pre-dawn gloom habit took over, and I immediately stuck in my earphones, scrolling through my phone to catch up on the messages and notifications I'd blissfully ignored for the past several hours. It was painfully, obviously, a child's pink bicycle. The tiny frame looked ridiculous underneath him. He wasn't going anywhere specific, just doing slow, wide loops on the empty street, always ending up slightly behind me. Now I've lived in London for about 3 years. You see, weird stuff is part of the background noise. My default programming kicked in. Head down. Keep walking. Don't make eye contact. Don't get bored eventually. You know, standard operating procedure for navigating the city's low-level strangeness. But then he wasn't behind me anymore. He smoothly cycled up right alongside me, matching my pace. The ignored strategy suddenly felt very thin. He was muttering something. It was clear he wanted my attention. Reluctantly, I pulled out 1 ear, but still walking, trying for casual indifference. My automatic defense mechanism fired off before I even properly heard him. "I'm sorry, I don't have any change." That's when I made the mistake of actually looking at him. His eyes, intense and fixated on mine, immediately triggered alarm bells. It wasn't a request for change. My gaze dropped, noticing his right hand shoved deep into his hoodie pocket, pushing the fabric outward. A sudden jolt, like plunging into ice water, replaced any lingering casualness with a sharp, cold fear. Then I properly registered his low, clear words. "Give me your phone." My feet moved on autopilot, but the rest of me felt paralyzed, my mind struggling to process the demand against the very real threat implied by whatever was in that pocket. Is he bluffing? Is that a knife? Is this phone? This phone I literally just got and definitely can't afford to replace, worth getting stabbed over. The mental calculus was frantic and terrifying, but we're still moving forward, side by side, in this bizarre, terrifying mobile standoff. Me staring straight ahead, hyper-aware of him right beside me and my mind racing. And then, a sound, the distinct rumble of a car engine growing louder. Headlights swept across the end of the street, illuminating the junction just yards ahead. A brief moment of blinding light. I shot a look back at the guy on the tiny pink bike. The thought flashed, run, make a break for the car, for the light. But before the thought could even translate into action, he abruptly swerved. He pushed off hard on the tiny pedals, cycling rapidly down the street, disappearing back into the shadows as quickly as he'd appeared. I just stood there, for a second, hard hammering against my ribs. Then the next thought hit me. Crap. I still have to walk home. Needless to say, the McDonald's craving vanished instantly. On the way back, the headphones stayed off, and my phone stayed deep in my pocket, clutched in my hand. I also gave the quiet suburban streets a wide berth, and instead I took the long way round, sticking to the main. A road, it's noisy, choked with fumes even at this hour, and the pavement is basically a narrow, neglected strip, inches away from speeding traffic. It felt horrible, but infinitely safer. The constant stream of headlights, the drone of vengeance. It was unpleasant, but it was a presence company of Iowa. Thankfully, the rest of the walk was uneventful. No more unexpected cyclists emerged from the dark. But yeah, I'm just really glad that it wasn't as bad as it could have been. Guy on a tiny pink bike at 4:09 a.m. demanding my phone. Hopefully I don't ever encounter you again. It was July 2011. I had just turned 21 and was living in the Piedmont region of North Carolina. Dating apps were still in their infancy, and I found myself gravitating towards Craigslist personals. It was raw, anonymous, and wide open. Each post a gamble. Users would write short ads with vague descriptions. Sometimes they included a blurry photo. Most of the time, it was just a few bold sentences, dangling mystery and danger. Young and naive, I wasn't looking for love, just a quick, exciting connection. I responded to one listing that immediately caught my eye. A woman replied almost instantly, which both surprised and excited me. Our online conversation began innocently enough, with greetings, shared interests, and a touch of flirting. Soon, however, we were deep into fantasies of what might happen if we met. It was all PG-13 for the time, and I was buzzing with adrenaline. After about 30 minutes, she asked for a picture. I sent a selfie and requested one in return. What I received was a photo of a woman who appeared to be in her mid-40s. She had shoulder-length blonde hair, hazel eyes, a warm smile, and breasts that seemed designed to captivate a 21-year-old. Her body was not toned, but she looked healthy and normal, like an attractive suburban mom. Then she asked, "Are you generous?" I didn't know what she meant. Generous how? Time compliments, but I didn't want to sound dumb and risk ruining the moment, so I answered, "Of course I am." She then responded with perfect, then gave me her address. She lived about 30 minutes away from me. I told her I'd head out right away. She replied, "Great, I'll get ready for you." The drive was a cocktail of excitement and nerves. I couldn't believe my luck. The idea that a woman like her wanted to meet me, just some skinny guy from the area, felt so surreal. But the closer I got, the quicker my confidence evaporated. The houses grew more run down, the yards cluttered with discarded furniture and trash bags. Streetlights flickered over Greg's sidewalks and shuttered windows. I told myself not to judge her by where she lived. People fall on hard times, right still. The butterflies in my stomach started swarming into something darker. I arrived at a 2-story house. It wasn't as dilapidated as the others, which gave me a sliver of hope. I surveyed my surroundings carefully, marking anything that felt off the street. Was quiet. No voices, no movement, just the hum of distant traffic and the occasional bark from a dog down the block. Before getting out, I had all of my belongings in the car, so there'd be nothing tempting to steal. I carried only my phone and more shoes I could run in just in case. I climbed the steps and knocked. A woman's voice answered from inside. "Come in." The door creaked as I entered, and my senses were immediately assaulted. The inside was absolute chaos. Newspapers stacked to the ceiling, crusty takeout containers balanced on shelves, boxes stuffed with random junk, and cereal spilling all across the floor. The smell wasn't overpowering, but carried the unmistakable scent of decay. Straight ahead was a staircase leading to the second floor. To the left, a living room bathed in flashing TV light. A tall man sitting on the couch, arms stretched across the backrest, staring at the screen like he was waiting for something or someone. A chill ran through me. Who was he? Why didn't she mention anyone else being here? I called out, "Hey, where are you?" Her voice answered again, soft and sultry this time, from a room down the hallway. The man remained silent, his gaze fixed on the screen like a watchful sentinel. I navigated carefully through the towering piles of garbage and grime. As I approached the doorway, the air grew heavy with debris. I peered inside and froze. She was there, but she was not the woman from the photographs. This woman was enormous. Her greasy brown hair hung limply, and her scalp was sparse in places. Her face was poorly made up, with prominent moles barely concealed. When she smiled, I saw only a few teeth behind streaks of red lipstick. She sat on what I presumed was a queen-sized mattress, though most of it was buried beneath the trash. Her breasts barely sat inside a sheer-stained nightgown. They hung to her knees. As she sat wide-legged, motioning for me to come closer, Bob would truly turn to my stomach. Wasn't her appearance. It was the environment. The bed she sat on looked molded, collapsing beneath her weight. She shifted to make space. The room was a biohazard. She gestured for me to sit beside her. I took one hesitant step in, still unsure how to exit without escalating. "Thanks," she asked. "What would you like to see, dear?" While fondling herself, then she said, "So how generous are you going to be?" Denied, confused. I asked, "What do you mean exactly?" She giggled. "How generous are you going to be with your payment?" Suddenly it clicked. Generous was code. This wasn't a hookup. This was a transaction. I began backing out of the room, apologizing profusely. "I'm sorry. I didn't understand. I didn't know this was that kind of arrangement." I was halfway down the hallway when the man from the couch stood up and, now blocking the door, I felt the walls closing in. He was huge, easily 6'8", broad and unmoving behind me. The woman stormed into the doorway. "You wasted my time, and you're not even going to pay for it." She hissed. The man crossed his arms and spoke in a voice like steel. "It's either you pay for the time you wasted, or I'll take the payment from you, little man." Fear of holes in my chest. I was alone in a strange house, cornered. I had no backup, but then I thought of a way out. I stood tall. Well, as tall as a 5'5" guy could at 120 pounds. I then said, "If you really think I came out here without telling someone where I'm going, you're absolutely stupid." I told my friend before I left to expect a call within 45 minutes. If they don't hear from me, they're calling the cops. He squinted at me. "You are bluffing. You sure you want to take that gamble?" I said, pointing toward the window, because I smelled weed from the sidewalk And the cops will too. You'll let me walk out right now and I'll forget this ever happened. But if you make this hard, you'll have 2 squad cars parked here in less than 10. The moment I was out of sight, I screamed. Relief, shock, anger. I was lucky, and I never went on Craigslist again. This happened about 15 years ago, and I feel compelled to share it now that the company is no longer in operation, so I shouldn't face any repercussions. I used to work for a car manufacturing company. I'll omit the brand name and location for privacy. My role was in the finishing department. To understand the story, it's important to visualize the layout of our department. The car frames moved along a large assembly line. Our department had 3 such lines, each dedicated to a different vehicle model. Each line featured 2 massive high pots, which were essentially buildings within the main building, comparable in size to a pole barn. The first high pot on each line was a giant washer. It would spray the unpainted car frame with a highly toxic chemical commonly used in factories at a boiling 500 degrees Fahrenheit. This process cleaned impurities from the frame and helped the paint adhere better. After leaving the first high pot, it would go to the second one where the frame was dunked, flipped over, dragged, and pulled out of the giant pool of paint by a robot, and then send down the line after going through the dryer. Anyway, these iPods have certain safety features on them, one being, if you open a door while it's running, it trips, the yays stop, and sets off the alarms. However, the machine has to be stopped from the outside before the doors to it will unlock, and there's no stop button inside them. This will be important later. Anyway, we had this supervisor named Christy, and let me tell you, she was a bitch. Christy was a redhead in her 30s who didn't really care about anything.
I literally heard her tell someone, "Look, I don't care if you have a heart attack and die." Yeah, she's that kind of person. She didn't really bother me too much. However, there was one employee over at the other high pot line that she had it out for Armando. Armando was a Mexican guy in his 40s who had apparently immigrated to the United States only 4 years prior.
He had been working there for roughly 1 year. At this point, he was quiet, but he did a good job. Christy wouldn't leave him alone though, and whenever she thought nobody was listening, she would walk by him and just make really awful comments. Little did she know, this would set Armando over the edge. Later that day, I was running my line when I heard the alarms for the high pot washer on Armando's line go off. It probably just faulted out again, which actually happens regularly to all of our equipment. I didn't think much of it, and just went back to my own line. 10 minutes later, I hear the alarms go off again, this time in a different tone, signaling. The high pod is starting up, but I hear screaming, Christy's muffled screaming. I look over and I see Christy in one of those plexiglass windows of the high pot washer screaming and banging on the door as the hot sicker is being sprayed on her. I then look over to Armando, and I'm expecting him to hit the e-stop or do something. But he doesn't. He just stands there watching with his arms crossed. I quickly run over the walkovers that cross over the conveyors. I have to cross 3 of those to get in his line, which takes about 1 minute. I run over to the control panel and press the e-stop, which unlocks all the doors on the high pot washer and sets off the alarms as well. Christy stumbles out of the access door to the high pot, and I'll never forget the horrifying scene of flesh melting away from her bones and blood beginning to ooze out. That awaited me. Eventually, paramedics arrived, and Christy was taken away, and Armando was taken away in handcuffs by the police. Armando stopped the washer and walked away. Christy, noticing it was off, investigated and entered the machine. Armando then shut and locked the door behind her. Restarting the washer, Christy died from scalding hot water as Armando, fed up with her harassment and HR's inaction, finally snapped. He received a life sentence. OSHA began an investigation, but the company declared bankruptcy 2 years later, and the building was eventually demolished. I still think about that to this day, and I can't imagine a more horrifying way to die. I've been working at the same law firm in New Orleans for almost a year. I'm a fresh, young female attorney who primarily works in Subbox 1 Mass towards lawsuits as violently. Things have been fairly unsettling at the workplace. What makes it worse is that nothing's being done. I want to keep my job without causing issues, but there's a man working here who makes it incredibly hard. His name is Anthony, and he is a black and nerdy paralegal who I assume is in his early 30s. You can say that I brought this abuse upon myself for being overly friendly with him, but I'm just that way with everyone. This all began back in November, when Anthony had really first started communicating with me. He came off as distant at first, but then he would always wave and stare at me. He would also do this strange salute type of gesture whenever he would see me. Nothing too crazy, but in hindsight, it is a little weird. He would always be at the office very early and would hang out in the kitchen making the coffee. I came in early one day and decided to grab a hot cup of joe. Anthony was in the kitchen. I smiled and said, "Hello," and he just stared at me while I worked on making my own cup of coffee. I had trouble reaching a cup until I saw his hand reach up and grab it for me. He then talked to me for a little bit. He was very awkward and tended to sweat a lot. My guess was that he was just nervous. He then told me if I ever needed a hand with grabbing things out of reach, to shoot him a team message. I laughed and got to work. As time went on, I noticed he would do very awkward and strange things, like stand there awkwardly in silence. Whenever I was chit-chatting with the other co-workers, I began to tell myself that he might just be a little on the spectrum, and that he was just probably completely harmless. Our Christmas party is usually the first weekend in December, and our firm goes all out for us. Our first night is a cocktail hour, the second is a formal dinner, and Sunday's a day of fun activities all around the city. At our firm's paid Friday event, everyone was unwinding, enjoying wine, beer, and other drinks. I noticed Anthony, as he often does with certain individuals in a group setting, seemed to be hovering around me. I chose to stay sober that night, wanting to avoid any embarrassing moments at my first Christmas work event. Eventually, it was just Anthony, our co-worker Melanie, and I at a table, eating. Melanie, a kind and attractive woman in her mid-40s with a southern accent, joined us. We were both amused by Anthony's unusually boisterous behavior, a stark contrast to his typical calm demeanor. He would talk loudly and say little things while jumping up and being very animated. He was sweating profusely while doing so, as if it were on drugs or something. It was kind of like watching Chris Farley, but way less funny and more awkward and concerning. Although it was awkward, Melanie and I were still laughing to be nice. Anthony went to the bathroom, and Melanie started to gossip.
"You know, he seems nice, and he kind of gives me the creeps," she said.
She told me how uncomfortable it makes her when he stands behind her and then says nothing and just slowly walks away. She said one time she swore that he was following her home in his car, but it was hard to tell because she said his car stopped at the end of her street. I laughed and just told her something like, I think he's just a little under the umbrella. Anthony is harmless. Are you sure it's him? The mood of the conversation then got a little more serious. She looked me dead in the eyes and told me, "Girl, I've been working my whole life in these types of environments. Do not give a man like that any reason to think you are easy to walk on, because it'll be a stray dog situation, and no one will believe you."
I brushed it off, and I kinda just told myself that Melanie was probably racist. Little did I know I was really giving food to a stray dog that just wouldn't go away. As the workday wound down and the anticipation for cocktail night built, I decided it was time to head home and prepare. Stepping out of the office, I spotted Anthony on the curb, clearly having had a bit too much to drink and looking rather bored as he fiddled with his phone. "What's up?" I asked. He grinned, explaining he lived an hour and a half away and was simply killing time before the event. "Are you gonna meet up with friends?" I inquired. "No, I'm just probably gonna sit here and play on my phone, but it might die," he replied. I felt a pang of sympathy for him and a strong urge to do something kind. "Well, I live a few blocks down the road. Why don't you come hang out with me in my apartment while I get ready?" I asked, hoping and expecting that he would say, "No, that sounds pretty cool," he said. I cringed as we walked to my car. The ride there wasn't so bad. He just talked a lot about video games, Magic, The Gathering, and other nerdy stuff that I wasn't really familiar with. I just pretended to be interested. When we got to my apartment, my roommate wasn't home, but luckily I kept a baseball bat right under my bed in case anything weird happened. I told him we had a few seltzers and beers in the fridge and that he could help himself if he would like. While I took a quick shower while I was showering, I just kept thinking how stupid I was for getting myself into this. It was so weird and awkward. What if Melanie was right? What if he did stalk her? And then out of my peripheral vision, I saw him. I usually tend to gaslight myself into thinking I'm crazy, but this time I knew what I saw. It was a flash of wine near the bathroom door and a familiar flashing light. It was 100% an iPhone camera flash. I waited and then peeked out of the shower and saw nothing. I just stood there, paralyzed in fear. I told myself he didn't get a picture of me, but I need to think of an emergency plan to get him the hell out of my house as calmly as possible. I hurried and got dressed as fast as I could, but then went out to speak with Anthony. "Oh man, you're not gonna believe this. My cousin had an emergency and needs me to go pick her up right now," I said. I didn't hear a response, but when I went to my room, Anthony was laying on the floor and appeared to have drunk at least 7 beers. What he said as he laid there, completely hammered. "She doesn't feel so good."
I had too much to drink. Bro, did you just chug like 6 beers in 10 minutes while I was in the shower? I knew that I had gotten myself into a real pickle, and I was screwed. I couldn't tell if he was actually drunk or faking, but he wouldn't get off the floor of my bedroom. "Anthony, dude, come on. You've got to get it together."
"I have to go," I thought, but he just lay there, feigning sleep. I retreated to the living room, pretending to call my cousin to cancel our plans. Disbelief washed over me. What was I supposed to do? Leave him here, or hang out with him? This wasn't what I signed up for. I'd only wanted to be nice. I put on my makeup and decided to wait in the living room to see what he'd do. After a couple of hours in my bed, he finally emerged. He seemed perfectly fine, and we ended up watching Netflix until it was time for the work holiday event. "Dude, I didn't realize you drank so much," I commented. "You totally owe me more beer." He looked disheartened and confessed that he'd struggled with alcohol for years, using it as a coping mechanism for never knowing his father. Then, as if the night couldn't get any worse, he started to cry. Here I was, with a big drunk weird coworker sobbing in my living room about his dad. I was texting my roommate the whole time, and we came up with an idea to leave him at the work event while he came and picked me up to go do something else. My roommate is a young guy named Connor, and we really have a great sibling type of relationship. I'm thankful he was able to help me slip out of this crappy situation. We walked in together, Anthony finally got away from me. It was a real relief as I went off and talked to coworkers that were actually my friends. At one point in the night, I would start to see Anthony pop up again and again, though I then began to notice him looking at me and pointing when he was talking to people. This made me uncomfortable. Then a woman attorney who I really admire came up to me and asked if I was okay. I lied and said yes, and she just stared at me blankly and then bluntly said, "Look, Anthony is saying the two of you are dating." My heart sank. What the fuck? No, that is the furthest thing from the truth. I said. I walked over and confronted him. He could barely stand and shouted, "Hey babe." He reeks of liquor and was spitting with every word that left his mouth. I really liked this song. Can we dance? I told him he needed to get an Uber home, stop drinking, and relax. He was being insanely loud, and it was making a scene. I walked out and went to a bar down the road until my roommate came to pick me up. My roommate and I met up at a bar and hung out while I explained to him what was going on. After about an hour, Melanie called me. "Hey girl, we're all leaving the cocktail hour, but we noticed that Anthony's in your car." "What?" I said, "Girl, yeah, he's in your car, laid out in the seat naked." I stood up from where I was sitting, and I told her to bang on the car and make him fucking leave. "Now," she then said, "there are about 12 co-workers outside of your car right now trying to get him to open the door." My car was fine. No Anthony, nothing weird, just my car parked. I went home that night with no issues, but was fucking terrified that he knew where I lived. He didn't show face to the holiday dinner, but I did. A few of the folks were pretty spooked about what had happened the night before. We all agreed to talk about this to someone in management on Monday. Monday came, and I kid you not, no one would vouch for me, besides Melanie, the other attorneys, and co-workers, who I trusted all acted like they didn't even remember or thought it wasn't as bad as it had seemed that night. Oh, come on now. We all had a lot to drink. He's a weird guy and probably just didn't realize he was in your car. He had his clothes on in your car. You aren't remembering correctly. Our operations manager attorney refused to believe us. This is a man's career at stake. I can't just fire him without any proof. Melanie is a rumor starter, and she has something against Anthony. Are you sure you didn't just sleep with him and now you're embarrassed? He said the two of you dated is what they told me. Since the incident, he has sent love notes to my address, called my cell phone from private numbers, and would breathe on the line. And he's followed me home from work twice. Nothing has been done, but I'm in the process of getting a sorry ass fired. I just didn't know it would be this hard. For the record, I actually tested slotting my phone under the bathroom door, and it could 100% get a clear shot of the bathroom.
I guess to start off, my life up to 2005 was pretty traumatic and heartbreaking. That being said, not much really scared me 20 years ago when this happened. The story is more creepy than anything else, I guess. I started working at a Burger King in my town, and things went really well. However, there was this one coworker who called himself Tom.
He looked normal enough, and most people liked him. I don't know what it was about him, but I refused to work with him. He would give me these creepy dead-eyed smiles and try to be near me whenever he could. I would get nauseous around him, and my managers told me to get over it or be fired. About a week after talking with the manager, Tom disappeared and never again showed up for work. More time had passed, and my coworkers and I found out that his name was, in fact, not even Tom. He was a child predator who was wanted in Kansas. At the age of 17, I looked about 14. That creeps me out even further. I have many more stories about creepy encounters and various types of assaults from strangers, foster parents, and blood family members alike. This was one of the first though, so I thought I'd share it. Please be safe out there, everyone. This event didn't happen to me, but rather my mom. We live in a pretty nice neighborhood with close to no crime whatsoever. However, in the neighboring city, Newark, New Jersey, things are very different. In my opinion, it's probably the worst place in New Jersey, right behind Camden. My mom works in Prudential, and the building she works at is located in Newark. She always told me about how seedy things were down there, and that she hated driving around there. Yesterday in particular, things were extra scary, and she barely escaped. She was driving to work in the early morning, and traffic was heavier than usual. She reached Newark, and to her left was a Dunkin' Donuts drive-through. There was also a trunk coming through that same drive-through. It apparently thought it could squeeze through the traffic to get into the main road. However, as it was speeding up to get through, the two cars in front of my mom were beginning to drive too. The two cars crashed right into the truck. My mom was screaming, thinking it was for her, as she was now the closest to the crash. Thankfully, with a bit of help, her car safely got around the wreckage, and she escaped unscathed. It's crazy to think that if she was just two cars ahead, she could have crashed into the truck and been gravely injured or worse. She got to work safely, and she let us know about the situation, and that she was okay, and at work, but the story doesn't end here. Her day ended about 3 p.m., and she was getting ready to drive back home. When she drove to the main road, she noticed the traffic was even bigger than it was that morning. You might think that this was because of the crash, but it wasn't. She had passed the Dunkin' Donuts already at this point. One of the lanes was empty, so Mom decided to drive into it, hoping to get out of the traffic faster. But when she did, she heard screaming and men shouting, "He's dead, he's dead." She had just turned shouting when she crossed into the empty lane, and that's when she was met with the gruesome sight of a dead corpse ridden with blood on the road right in front of her. And I mean that. There was blood everywhere. The men who shouted earlier were dragging the corpse across the street and off the main road. The rest of my mom's drive went smoothly after that. As of today, we have absolutely no idea what came of these two occurrences. We don't know how that man died, but I assume he got ran over or something. My mom is going into work today, and her day is a lot better, but she still hates going into Newark. My name is Reed, and I'm a 25-year-old male. This is about the time I had a stalker at my job at a restaurant where I worked as a bartender. I never thought much about the people I worked with at the restaurant. It was just a job, something to pay the bills while I figured out the rest of my life. I bartended every night working the late shift. Most of the customers were regulars, old faces, late-night drunks, the occasional couple on a date. Nothing ever really stood out. That is until I met her. Her name was Clara. She started about 3 weeks after I did filling in for shifts, when we got slammed. She wasn't anything special at first, just another person trying to get by, turned dark hair, a little too much makeup for the job. I never paid her much attention, just another face behind the counter. But there was something about her that just started to feel off. It was little things at first, like how she always stood just a little too close when we talked, or how she'd smile just a bit too long. When she handed me an order, I didn't think much of it. I just chalked it up to her being new, maybe a little nervous around me or the job, but then it kept happening. She'd linger around the bar when it wasn't her shift watching me work, asking if I needed help when I clearly didn't. She'd comment on how I made drinks or how I interacted with the customers, even though she wasn't exactly an expert herself. I caught her looking at me from across the room, her gaze lingering just a little too long. At first, I figured I was just imagining it, but after a few nights, I started to feel more like she was studying me. One evening I was wiping down the bar, After the last call when she came over, she had this tight smile on her face, but it didn't reach her eyes. "You're really good at what you do," she said, her voice soft, but not exactly casual. "You've got this ease about you." I smiled back, kind of unsure on how to respond. "Thanks, I've been at it for a while." She nodded, her fingers lightly tapping the edge of the bar, almost absent-mindedly. Then she said, "Maybe we could hang out sometime, outside of this place."
I didn't know how to respond. I wasn't rude, but I wasn't interested either. I don't really think that'd be a good idea. I said, trying to keep my tone friendly. "I'm actually pretty busy outside of work." Her face faltered for a second, but she quickly recovered. "Oh, no worries. Just thought I'd ask the next night."
She had handed me a folded piece of paper when no one else was looking. She smiled, like it was some kind of secret. "Just in case you change your mind," she said softly, "I'd like to spend more time with you." I opened the paper after she left. It was a phone number. I wasn't really sure what to make of it. I didn't want to be rude, so I pocketed it, figuring I could just ignore it if it came to that. But the whole interaction left a weird feeling in my stomach. Something didn't feel right. The following week, Clara's behavior escalated. She started showing up at the bar on nights when she wasn't scheduled to work. I'd be mixing drinks, and there she was sitting at the counter with her usual drink, just watching me. At first I thought she was just a regular customer, but then I noticed how she'd order the same thing every night, sipping slowly and watch me work as if she was analyzing every little thing I did. I'd catch her staring at me when I wasn't looking, and when I didn't look up, she'd quickly glance away like she'd been conning something she shouldn't have. The worst part was how she never seemed to talk to anyone else. She'd just sit there waiting for a moment. When I wasn't busy to talk to me, I started to feel trapped, like I was walking a tightrope, unsure when she'd crossed the line between friendly and, well, something else. One night after the bar, and slowed down, I was wiping down the counter when she slid into the seat right in front of me. She said softly, almost like she was telling me a secret, "I've been thinking about you a lot lately." I froze the rag in my hand, pausing midair. I tried to laugh it off. "Well, it's not like we don't see each other enough here." She didn't smile. "No, I mean, I really think we have something special. It's not like the other guys. You don't just see me as a bartender, you see me." I wasn't sure what to say to that. I didn't feel any special connection whatsoever. Nothing like that. Anyways, "I don't know what you mean, Clara." She reached into her purse and pulled out a small envelope, sliding it across the bar toward me. "It's for you. Just a little something." I hesitated, then took it. Inside was a card, a personal one, the kind you give someone you had a history with, not someone you just met. The note was simple, but chilling. "We're meant to be together. Read. I know you feel it too." I felt my stomach drop, my thoughts race, but before I could say anything, she stood up and left, leaving me with that feeling of unease deep in my bones. That's when it started, the weird notes, the unexpected visits to my apartment, the awkward, forced interactions where I tried to be polite, but she just wouldn't take the hint. She started to follow me after work, waiting outside the restaurant, sometimes watching me walk to my car. She'd smile and wave, but I'd get into my car as quickly as I could, my hands shaking on the wheel. I couldn't take it anymore. One night after I got off late, I found a note on my windshield. "I know where you live. Read. I'll be there soon." I went cold. I didn't know how she found out where I lived, but I couldn't ignore it. This wasn't some harmless crush anymore. She was stalking me. I had to talk to my manager. I told him everything, how Clara was making me uncomfortable, how I was scared to come to work, how I was feeling trapped by her constant presence, and listened. I could see the doubt in his eyes. It was hard for him to believe me at first, But when I showed him the note on my windshield, his face dropped. The next day, Clara was fired. I'd heard from the other staff that she had been let go for unprofessional behavior. They didn't go into details, but I knew it was more than that. I wasn't the only one she had been bothering. Apparently, she'd been sending strange texts to a few other coworkers too, but I didn't find that out until later. My manager called me into his office. After her firing, he seemed genuinely sorry about what had happened. I know it's been rough, he said, and I just want you to know if you ever want your job back, it's yours, Biden. I didn't want to come back. I couldn't. I didn't feel safe there anymore. Not after everything that happened. The restaurant had been my escape, my routine, but it had turned into a place of anxiety, a place where I constantly looked over my shoulder. No amount of money was worth the constant fear I felt. I appreciate the offer, I told him, but I can't come back. It's just too much. I walked away from that job, and I never looked back. It wasn't easy. Money was tight for a while, but I eventually found something else, something safer, quieter. But even now, there are moments when I'm walking down the street at night, and I feel like I'm being watched. I'm always on edge, always checking over my shoulder. I don't know where Claire is now, or if she's even still out there. Maybe she's moved on to someone else. Pardon? I've learned that some things just stay with you, even after they're gone. And for me, the worst part isn't even the fear anymore. It's the question that keeps me up some nights.
What if she's still out there waiting for me to slip up again? But that's a problem for someone else now. For me, well, I'm done.
Hey everyone, I hope you enjoyed today's story. I know that you're probably all sick of me talking about this and promoting it, but here I am. I've been streaming on Kick for a couple of months now, and I stream multiple times a week. I started doing this around the time that I face revealed, and it's been a lot of fun, and it's kind of been my new venture that I've been doing.
When I'm not working on stories, I do a lot of different things over there. I play games. Sometimes I react to certain videos. Pretty much just a bit of everything. It's a lot more fun for me personally, and it's also more interactive and engaging. If that sounds like something you'd be into, consider checking it out. Regardless, I appreciate all your support, whether it's over here or on mic. But yeah, it would mean a lot if you'd consider checking it out sometime. Anyways, it's kick.com, Southern Cannibal. Alright, have a good day, everyone. And remember to always stay hungry. The shit reminds me of like the black stuff that gets on Spider-Man, the symbiote or whatever it's called. Holy shit. No. Oh my god. Breath.